What's your favorite thing about Teacher Appreciation Week?
This is a serious answer. I had a parent I had last year who's a middle school teacher. And while Ellie and I were leaving, she had stopped me and just said, "Hey, I want to let you know. I have never really heard people say this before, but I have students this year that just rave about you and their experience in 5th grade." And I was like, "Oh my, you're making my day." She went out of her way to say, "No, I've never heard this before, but they just loved your class so much." I'm just like, oh.
That's a good story.
I'm Hunter Pence, and you're listening to the Misplay podcast. Oh, yeah.
Hello, and welcome to the Misplay, where we spell gray with an E. My name is Mark.
My name is Jason. So we finally, Mark, got around to playing the game we picked up at Game Market West last year. It was made by Velgus, Murder at the Atelier.
What'd you think?
It was great. As somebody that creates escape rooms every year, so I create escape rooms every year for my students, this was an escape room in a package of cards. You opened it up like it was a pack of baseball cards. In it were a series of puzzles and a story, and you had to do physical things, you had to do puzzly things. There was one part of the puzzle where you had to write the word gray. And then from each one of those words in this crossword puzzle, one of the answers was gray, there was a letter you needed. Well, in gray, it happened to be the third letter, which is an E, according to my sister, Melissa, because we grew up very close to Canada. We grew up in Rochester, New York. Canada's right there. And you know how they spell gray?
Grey.
That's right. I always spelled gray that way as well as a kid.
Did it ever get marked wrong in school?
Oh, I'm certain it did. That letter was really important because the word that you had to make with those letters made a word, whether it was with an A or an E. So when we had the E, it was spelling a different word. It was spelling the word brownie, which is like, I don't know, I guess that could be a color. I wouldn't have used that, but it's a word. For all of those letters that randomly spell brownie, that had to be it. And then we realized that the letter needed to be something else. And we caught that gray was written with an E and not an A, as most people here in the United States spell it. And if you switched it, it then spelled another word.
Ooh, would you call it a red herring?
It wasn't intentional, I don't think. I sent a message on Blue Sky and I said, "Game was great. Has anyone run into this before?" And they said, "Yeah, a few people have." So it is a thing, but it wasn't intentional.
You speak the Queen's English and not French.
Right. I don't know if I speak either.
I know you bought the game at Game Market West. It's self-published?
I think Velgus worked with Solus to publish it.
Why aren't we pitching publishers?
I see what you did there. It's not a terrible idea. It might even be a really good idea. We decided a long time ago that we weren't going to pitch our game to publishers, but we've never talked about why, so we're going to do that today. But before we do that, this week's episode is brought to you by Board Game Casual. Board Game Casual is a YouTube channel welcoming people into the board game hobby with video reviews, recommendations, unboxings, tips for accessorizing on a budget, and more. In a recent video, Board Game Casual looks at a set of metal coins, a popular upgrade for a lot of board gamers. There's definitely something different about a game when you like the feel and the weight of its components. Mark is across the table from me right now thinking, "That's what I've been trying to tell you about our game." I know, Mark, I know. But landed costs, bro. Leave it to Board Game Casual to help you find your component upgrades. Give Board Game Casual a view at Board Game Casual on YouTube, at Board Game Casual channel.
And be on the lookout for their future video on tile upgrades for games like Azul.
The Thing.
You've delayed it long enough. I think it's time to pivot.
It's not time to pivot.
This is the time of year every year where we pivot.
That's true. That is true.
Only I don't think we have to pivot away from the game. I think the game is good.
The game is great.
Why aren't we pitching to publishers?
I'm going to tell you the reason, and then we'll talk about why that reason might be wrong or right, but there's one reason. There's one reason we're not doing it. It's because when we started this project and knew nothing about what we were doing, we said we were going to bring it to crowdfunding. That was our plan. I suppose you could find a publisher and still do that, but our plan was to always publish it ourselves and learn how to publish a game.
That must be my trick here, because I hear you saying publish, but not publisher. I know you want to publish the game yourself or ourselves. But I did a quick search and went to one of, if not the premier place to learn about board game design and questions about bringing your board game to life at Stonemaier Games. 4 simple steps to pitch your game to a tabletop publisher. It looks like a lot less work.
It is most definitely less work. I don't doubt that. If you're somebody who's comfortable pitching it 50 times.
Don't you have a background in sales?
We're both public speakers, essentially. I don't think it would be particularly challenging for us to go to people and pitch and get turned down and go to the next group and get turned down. I don't think it is about difficulty. So I'm sure Jamie over there at Stonemaier Games has got, actually, I'm going to ask you what those are in a few minutes, but I'm sure it's broken down into some easy steps. But we had just decided we weren't going to do it. Maybe we should have at least explored it. But the reason was we shut it off immediately. At least I did in my head. But it sounds like you've been carrying it with you for a while, thinking, why aren't we doing this? Because Jason said we weren't 2.5 years ago.
That's right. Abdicate all responsibility. I mean, I think, yes, it was largely here's the plan. We're going to go from concept to business stuff. And now that we're a lot more focused on the business stuff, I'm like, the clock is ticking. The work is piling up. I know you're taking the brunt of it. Why aren't we doing the path of less resistance?
So why aren't we? I feel a little unprepared to give you all of the reasons. I'm going to try a running list. Number one is it's not guaranteed to be a game. We can go to 50 publishers. They can all say no. They can say, we don't like this idea. It's not even good enough for Cardboard Edison. We're not going to build it. That is possible. We could have built this game and everybody said, no, it's not for us.
That's probably a compelling enough reason by itself to justify what we're doing. But I think back to your talk about early on, like, oh, I don't know if we're even going to get there. Like, are we going to get to crowdfunding? I don't know. And your more recent thoughts on how we define and measure success of the project. I think there are metrics where you could succeed without the game becoming, even if you were pitching to publishers instead of going the crowdfunding route that we've chosen to go.
We have tried to position ourselves as a resource for other people who are making a board game. So even if we didn't get signed by a publisher, if we had talked about the process of how you do that and what the steps are, then yeah, it still could have been a valuable resource for other people, which was one of our stated goals when we started. We didn't want to tell people how to make a board game. We were trying to show them how we were making ours. And if it wasn't successful, it wasn't successful. Maybe our crowdfunding campaign won't be successful. The show will still go on. We could have still had the podcast, but I wanted to have a game made in a box available for other people to play. And I think if I'm the one who's in charge, it's guaranteed to happen. Now, is it the best game in the world? No, I don't mean our game. It is the best game in the world. But I mean, like, it didn't have to be the best game in the world when I started out. It just had to be a game in a box that I can have other people play. Now, you could argue, well, just because a publisher didn't publish it, you still have it, but it would just be prototype, right? I wouldn't have done all the steps to have a manufacturer make a copy.
You could have had it done at GameCrafter, and then you still have your like high quality prototype, one of one, so that when you're famous in some other domain in your life, now you can sell your one of one board game for millions.
Box it, ship it. Sure, Mark. So that's the first reason for me. It wasn't guaranteed to be a game. Number two is, and would have been, we lose control of it. In most cases, from what I have seen, is when a publisher agrees to assign it, you're basically signing it over to somebody else. You know, maybe they put a lockpicking theme on it and it's not a space game.
We can only hope.
But they take it and make it whatever they want. If they want it to be a pure abstract game, if, they come up with some other theme that they think fits it better, they would change that. They also might never produce it. I have heard a number of times from game designers that they've sold their game, they sell it, they sign over the rights to it, they get their flat fee, whatever that is, probably not a lot, and then the company does not make the game, and it just sits somewhere. Now, in some of those term sheets, I know after a certain number of years, you're supposed to be able to get it back or you can buy it back. But to go through that would have been, those podcast episodes would have been really boring.
We have a great attorney you could have on the show.
Right. It would just be every episode be like, yeah, send them another letter asking them, if they're planning to produce the game, and we've got to wait another month.
A cease and desist thing. You send them one. They probably send you one.
So losing control of it, I'm a control freak.
I do.
Okay. I don't think money was ever a reason. I don't think in either case we thought we would make more money doing it ourselves versus making more money selling it to a publisher and then collecting residual checks for the next 20 years in the mail for $1.25 every month. I don't think it was ever about money.
Passive income, bro.
So I can't factor money into the reason at all. You talked about what steps are involved to do that. I don't fully know what they are. I know step one is making a sell sheet. That's something we've never done because I haven't had any plans to publish it. So we make a sell sheet and then we pitch a publisher. And there's different ways you can do that. You can do that in person. You can reach out to them directly. You can go to events where people show up and just pitch games. 50 people come and pitch games. It's like speed dating for board games. That's a thing. We could have done that. You can do it at conventions. I'm sure there's, you can walk up to a publisher and introduce yourself and give them a quick pitch. And we always worked on that elevator pitch for that reason, right?
I was just thinking, how meta would it be to do like cold pitches at Gen Con for dating game? Speed dating with dating game.
Ooh, it's meta. Give me the tips, though, that you have from Stonemaier.
The outline included 4 main categories. First, you have to prepare, which it sounds like a lot of the things that I particularly enjoy about board games and the process of making a board game. And it has a good blend of things you enjoy also. So it talks about market research, which I know is a thing you do a lot of. Then there's, design your unique game, which has easily been my favorite part. And then other things like, make it look nice, have a good written pitch for it, have a nice rule book. So after you're prepared, you make your selection as kind of the next step. And the selection being choose the publishers that you love. They talk in the article about just choosing publishers. Choose publishers that have games that you like or that fit the game that you're making. In my head, I'm like, oh, you could pitch the folks that publish Yinch for our game, but you could pick your favorite publishers.
What is Yinch?
It's one of the abstract games that I wish we had played together that we haven't played together yet.
Yeah, I haven't heard of it. But I agree. That's something that I've heard on other podcasts like Fun Problems. They talk a lot about making sure when you're pitching to a company that makes games like you're building.
The next step is the more concrete pitch. On the website, they call it your submission, where you know the guidelines for what the publisher wants. You compare the game to other games that they've published, and then you really work on the sell sheet. So you sell yourself, you sell the game, you sell the hook of the game, and then the last step is kind of cross your fingers and pray or wait and hope, where you wait for them to respond to you. Be preparing for your next steps, whether that's like your video overview or feedback that you're going to get or sending a prototype, and then start familiarizing yourself with the legalese of what the contracts will look like. Nice, tight, little, gentle package for build a game, sell it to a publisher.
We could have done that. I think that's reasonable.
But
we said we weren't. And we made that bed, and now we just have to sleep in it. Had we gone that route, one of the things that I think would have been better is we would have been working on game number 2 already, more seriously than I have been personally working on Supermarket Game. But I think we would have had time to do a lot more game development on other projects, because we've been spending a lot of time right now talking about art. I'm emailing manufacturers. I am talking to logistics companies. I certainly would love just to be working on Supermarket Game. So I will say that's a drawback. Can you think of another drawback? Can you think of another, what would have been a positive had we chosen to go down that route and look for a publisher?
I think you highlighted the main one of more time spent designing games, presumably in the same room, because the late night times that you're working on manufacturing emails or I'm writing rulebook, there would be more room for our working time to be working time in collaboration and not working time in like separate settings.
So we're pivoting?
I mean, it is that time of year. But I know I already said like, oh, we'd be able to like work on more games, but like look at some of the ideas that had like real legs and the variety of games that we explored from, I don't know, what were the originals? MMA Gauntlet to Supermarket Game to Animal Kingdom to Depths to the various iterations of Nightmare Smashers. There was a breadth of really creative ideas.
You did not say that correctly. Please say that correctly. Nightmare Smashers. What about Tender Mercenaries?
Oh, what about Tender Mercenaries?
Yes. We had ideas that we haven't been able to work on.
I think that's the real in the moment loss, because there's a world where you could go back to any of those things after we take Under One Sky to crowdfunding and wherever that winds up. Because there will be a point where all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed. It's waiting for distribution or distribution begins. And then the question is, what's next? In the world of pitching to a publisher, the answer to what's next would be more readily at hand.
And I'll say in what is my running list, the last thing is the reason we had said in the beginning we were going to do it. And the whole point was so that we would learn about building a board game. I think this is a big step, publishing it yourself, figuring out what the components are, working with a manufacturer to get them the way that you want them, to get them for the cost that you want them, and then to get them shipped to you and then find ways to sell it. I think that was all part of it for me. I think when I started that was part of what I really wanted to know and do. I don't know if that was something you really wanted to do, but for me, when I came into it, learning about the totality, how you build a board game from just an idea to having the physical product in front of you. I wanted to learn how to do that.
That makes a lot of sense. It's something I probably could have seen earlier now that I know and have gotten to see kind of what the evolution of the thought was from where we started to where we are now, and in just knowing you in general. I've been quite happy to be a supporting cast member, a pretty voice on the show, a rulebook writer, a podcast editor, while you've really like pursued the depth and detail of the process that you've always found intriguing.
Does that make my percent higher?
Probably, but that was in our like distribution percentage thing anyway a long time ago.
It was, but it was even then, so.
No, because it was going to be, you wanted to do a workload model.
No, we had shifted from actually tracking workload to just making sure a certain percent or a certain level of effort was being put in.
But you were always going to hold like ownership, like primary ownership. You were always going to hold the majority of like ownership of whatever that wound up meaning.
Ownership of the like IP, the company, not ownership of the negative revenue. Although I'm still owning that. That's still me. I send you bills every once in a while.
Gen Con tickets.
Half the art.
Oh yeah. Have you sent that bill yet?
No, that one's coming for you. Kind of goes with it, the art, a little bit of control, deciding what it, I talked earlier about having control over the theme, but also specifically what it looks like and the style of art that comes to the game. We wouldn't have had that control.
I mean, now that we have the artist that we're working with, I would hate to see the game not get the art treatment that it is going to get because she's doing a phenomenal job with the art.
That will be an upcoming show for sure. We'd love to have our artists join us on the show and talk about that process and how difficult it is to work with me who has no idea what I'm doing.
Well, I think, Jason, this time you've talked me off the ledge. I don't think we have to pivot.
Excellent. I was considering it.
Oh, are you saying I should have pushed harder?
I think it was worth talking about why we had never considered it before. Let me ask you the question this way. Why do you think other people might tell us we're wrong? I'm already imagining the Discord messages that are coming our way. No, you guys should have just looked for a publisher. Tell me why they might think that, why that might have been a better course.
I mean, I think the lowest hanging fruit is still just the overall difference in effort between pitching a publisher and the way we're doing it. You have lots of constraints that are not tied to this, full-time job, full-time dad, baseball coach, you're playing baseball, this podcast, game design, your calendar is full.
It is.
My calendar is also full. It's different, but it's full. So I think like that would be the primary driver for some people of it's a little bit saying, oh, take the easier way out. I don't necessarily think that just because the process is easier doesn't mean that the quality or the effort or the joy in the learning has to be any less rich than learning the more detailed, more difficult, arduous process.
I agree with that. I think if somebody said that, I would understand what they're saying to me, and I get it. The only other answer that I'm coming up with to that question, what are the negatives of not choosing a publisher? I do think it is possible that a publisher could have taken our game and done something just a little bit more with it. Maybe it does have that turning and rotating board because they don't care about landed cost. Maybe there's a mechanic that they thought of having more experience designing games that our game doesn't have, or there's just a different way to do patterns and shape. I do think it's possible. It's not that I think it's possible. I think it's very likely that a publisher might have seen our game and said, good idea, but have you thought about this? And push this, somewhere else. And maybe that product would have been really good. Where I'm over here and I don't have that experience, where I just don't know what is possible for the price range that we can produce a game, to know the difference between things that are available to us to do from a product manufacturing point of view or, 2 months ago from a mechanical point of view. I think that's reasonable. I think it's fair to say that.
Well, since you're talking about our fancy rotating board, should we move into the other thing?
I like your bumper.
You got a chance to catch up with Randy O'Connor over the weekend?
Yeah. And since you're starting there, I'll start with one of the things that Randy had said to me was, if you gave yourself a little bit more time and you worked on finding a way to have a board that has a unique feature, he talked about just, like the way it folds out or having, something in it that allows the board to rotate. He was talking about how having one really standout feature would help our crowdfunding campaign be more successful. And he's right, for sure.
But landed cost, bro.
Exactly. From now until September, when hopefully our campaign is going to launch, I do think it's something for us to think about when we select our manufacturer, to talk to them about what's a potential upgrade look like. I have said to you before that I don't want to have a crowdfunding campaign that has all these tiers. Just wanted to have the game. This is the game. This is how much the game costs. We did everything we could to make it as good as we can for the price that we're able to sell the game for. But it would be interesting to know what we could potentially sell the game for, or what could be added that gives it that standout feature. Because in fairness, Randy's right, it doesn't have a component that pops out. But Randy was nice enough to talk to me for more than an hour about manufacturers. And I had shared our quotes with him. He gave me some feedback. He talked about his games, Roll-in-One and Gun It, that were both manufactured by Longpack. He also hooked me up with his logistics connection at Atron Global. So I've got somebody to reach out to talk about shipping. And it was just really nice of him to take that time to talk to us. This is all part of our process and steps for learning. I don't know what I'm doing. So I had to ask somebody who's done it already. And I think being a part of the Golden Gate Game Makers and having this extensive reach of people that I can talk to has been really helpful.
Box it, ship it.
And then I also have to give Randy a shout out for allowing us some table space in the coming weeks at KublaCon. KublaCon is a Bay Area board game convention, and Randy is part of the Bay Area Designer Coalition, and they're getting a table for the week, and they kind of spread it out over different board game designers who can come in and sell copies of their games or run demos. And Randy was nice enough to give us a time during KublaCon on the main floor where we can run a demo of our game. We're not going to be in a position to sell anything yet, but it will be a really good opportunity to start collecting emails and pointing people towards our Kickstarter.
I'm glad you got that time with him.
And you can find Randy's games at randyo.net.
The Misplay podcast is brought to you by Howley Boy Games. Consider donating at buymeacoffee.com/themisplay. We express our humble gratitude and recognize any level of support here on our list of sponsors. If you'd like to become a featured sponsor of the show, find our form at themisplay.com/sponsors.
What, can I just jot the things before I speak?
What the steps are?
No, why we aren't.
Oh, yeah. The joy of post-production.